Hello and welcome. I'm attorney Pam Flores, and we're here today to learn about lifetime asset protection trusts. So we have a lot to get covered today, so let's get started. For the best way for you to learn, to follow along today, is to turn off any distractions and set aside this time to learn how you can best leave your assets to your children. For listening here today, I'll be offering you what I call a golden ticket. This has a $1,000 value. I'll explain more at the end of this presentation. We all have our whys, and my why is my husband and my 3 dogs. I do everything that I can to have planning in place to protect them should anything happen to me. And part of that is what we're going to talk about today, is how you can protect inheritances to your children. And while you can't do it for a dog, you can do it for a spouse. But today we're just going to talk about how to leave inheritances to your children and how you can protect the funds that you leave to them. So if you give anything outright to your children, the assets that you give them could all be at risk if you just give it to them outright. So the alternative to that, what we're going to talk about today, is the 5 reasons that it could be a mistake just to give them the money outright, and then show you how you can protect that inheritance for many generations if that's what you'd like to do. So reason number 1 is to protect against a future divorce. Sometimes it's kind of hard when your kids are young to think about them getting a divorce in the future, but current statistics say that 42% of our children will divorce in their lifetimes. And in most divorces, property is divided somewhat evenly or equally. And if your children receive their inheritances outright, and then they commingle those assets, as many people do, then if they did get a divorce, those assets would most likely be divided with their future ex-spouse. And so anything that you did give them most likely would end up with the ex-spouse. So if you do have married children, or a child that most likely will get married in the future, if you do leave them an inheritance, what you can do is, if you leave it in a lifetime asset protection trust, it would be fully protected from any claims of that ex-spouse. So reason number 2 that you may want a lifetime asset protection trust is debt, either debt, bankruptcy, or creditors. Now, your child may incur such extreme debt that the only possible relief would come through bankruptcy. Possible causes of debt could be a failed business venture, a health event, addiction, mental illness, or an accident that results in a temporary or permanent ability to work. And that may come with staggering medical bills. There's also the possibility that your child may cause an accident negligently, not on purpose, that results in a judgment against them. And I'll talk about that in a bit, but bankruptcy does happen to good people. And you could ensure that any inheritance that you leave behind will never be at risk due to a mistake on their part or due to a health issue. So reason number 3 that you may want to leave the assets to your children protected is to avoid any lawsuits that may happen in the future. So like I mentioned before, if your child would commit a negligent act, and not just a auto accident, but if they negligently injure someone else, and even if it's unintended, they could injure someone or someone else's property, a judgment could wipe out their inheritance. While the best defense is always good insurance, there are times when insurance coverage just isn't enough, and a judgment is entered against the person who is negligent. For example, there was a case in Florida where a consultant brought a case for defamation against a Louisiana woman for posting defamatory statements about him online. She posted them on an internet bulletin board. The woman stated that the contractor was a fraud and a crook. Well, that contractor brought a lawsuit against her and got an award of $11.9 million. And whatever assets that woman owned, that person could go after, and that could include any sort of inheritance. And that's something that most people wouldn't think if they make comments online that they could get sued over them. So as you can see, neglectful behavior on the part of your children could wipe out any sort of inheritance that you would leave them. Reason number 4, mismanagement. If they're just not good with money, if they're easily manipulated, or they just don't have a lot of experience investing and they listen to people that they shouldn't. I have many clients who indicate that they don't trust their kids to manage the large sum of monies that they may be inheriting. That's based on, what they know of their kids' spending habits, that they might invest in unwise ventures or could be easily manipulated out of their money. And statistics support this for nearly about 20% of people who do inherit. According to a recent study out of Ohio State University, about 40% of people inheriting less than $100,000 will spend or lose the entire inheritance, and 18.7% of people who inherit more than $100,000 will spend or lose the entire inheritance. So I believe that if the inheritance is left in a different way, those numbers would greatly improve. And our last reason of why you wouldn't want to give your kids their inheritance outright is it might have a loss of work ethic. Someone once said, some people can't handle prosperity. And they might be right. In fact, most people might have a hard time inheriting large sums of money. And if you've ever read the book A Millionaire Next Door, it uncovered research showing that children who received an inheritance were worth 4/5 less than others in their same profession than those who didn't. Unprepared kids who inherit a large sum of monies, they might be susceptible to excessive spending, identity loss, and guilt over receiving such large sums that they didn't earn. Leaving an outright inheritance to your kids may do more harm than good. So there's an alternative to all these reasons of the problems that come with leaving the money outright to your kids. And like I mentioned, it's called a Lifetime Asset Protection Trust, or an LAPT. Now, most attorneys will tell you the answer is to leave your kids' inheritance in a trust, and they would be right. But then they would say to distribute that trust outright to your kids at specific ages or stages. And I feel there's a better way to do it, and it's called a Lifetime Asset Protection Trust. And this trust can be drafted to give your kids full control over their inheritance if you choose to give them that control, but to ensure that they never own the inheritance. And because the rule of law is that you can't lose what you never owned, you're gifting your kids with an airtight asset protection that they can't give themselves at any price. And in that situation, since they don't technically own the asset, a creditor can never go after the asset. It would be fully protected from all the creditors. So when you gift using an LAPT, the trustees own the property, not your children. So if your kids ever get divorced, file bankruptcy, or are ordered to pay damages in a lawsuit, they can't lose their inheritance. It's all fully protected. And to make sure that the asset protection is airtight, you select an independent trustee, one is that's not related by blood or marriage to you, and there's really no way that a creditor can ever attach that money that you leave them as long as it's in the trust. And with that, the trustee can pay bills directly. They could buy a car for your child. They could even buy a house if you wanted them to. And as long as the trust purchases these things, they're all fully protected. And sometimes parents just want the money protected in the trust, and once it goes to the kids, they can do what they want with it. And you can still give your kids withdrawal rights, that they can withdraw a certain percentage at a certain age, or a certain percentage after graduating from college. And you can draft all of those options in there if you wish. So in addition to what we just talked about of all the benefits of an LAPT, it can be a vehicle for also teaching your kids about investing through the trustee you select. Under the guidelines that you set out, you can instruct your trustee to make a distribution for those certain milestones in your child's life, such as giving a down payment on a home or paying for a wedding. You can set the guidelines to pay for things that, as a parent, that you would pay if you were here. You can also set up an LAPT to pay all educational expenses to encourage your kids to complete their college degree, to get a higher degree, like a graduate degree or a professional degree, or to pursue a vocation of their choosing, like to go into the building trades, to become an electrician or a plumber. And these are all guidelines that you would set ahead of time, and as they accomplish them, you could set out what the trustee would give them at that point. And if you feel that your kids might be ready at a certain age, you can allow your kids to be a co-trustee of their trust in conjunction with the trustee that you've chosen. That can provide your child with experience on how to invest wisely. And there can be a way to set that up to keep the asset protection in place, so they never lose that aspect of it, but they also understand how it all works and how investing works through the trustee. They would learn all of those things through that, all while keeping their inheritance asset protected. So as you can see, there's many ways to design a lifetime asset protection trust, and only you know your kids the best. And that's why when I work with parents, I ask them to tell me about their kids, and we work together to design a trust that best fits, your family and your children. So my process contains 3 steps. The first is where we meet for a family wealth planning session. If you want to move forward, we design your plan and your LAPT for your children and set up a structure that incentivizes them to invest and grow their inheritance rather than squander it or waste it. We'll discuss all the options that you have at that meeting. The best part of the family wealth planning session is that you will be more financially organized than you have ever been in your life. And our next meeting will be your signing meeting. All documents are signed at the meeting. I will take the documents back after you've signed them, and I scan all of them onto a USB. So you have them all digitally, and you also have all the originals. And then our last meeting, as you can see, that's where I give you the final documents. And we also conduct your legacy interview. So after you've planned for your kids' inheritance, I interview you so you can leave them your hopes and dreams and things that you would like them to remember you by. And we all put this on a video that we put on your USB. So if anything happens to you in the future, they can go back and watch it and see and hear you as many times as they like. And I ask you questions about your upbringing and any like words that you would like them to know, any life lessons that you'd like to pass on. So I mentioned before that I offer a golden ticket. And with this, I offer you a free family wealth planning session. And it does have one catch. And the session is free if you complete the homework. And the homework entails you getting your assets organized. And it's an asset inventory where you write everything down and we organize it all. And if you can do that before the meeting, then the session is free. And after the session, if you decide you want to move forward, then I will take $250 off your estate plan. And so that's my incentive to get you all to finally move forward with protecting your family and getting your plan in place. So thank you for attending today and learning about Lifetime Asset Protection Trust, LAPTs. And I appreciate you wanting to learn more about how to protect your children's inheritance. If you have any further questions, please feel free to book a free 15-minute call through my website or shoot me an email at pam@floreslegalgroup.com. Bye for now.